The actual environment for the Mexican investment industry I think, is bottoming. We are missing a lot of flow coming from international investors. Local investors like pension funds and mutual funds had access to the Mexican listed companies that had extremely cheap valuations compared to other markets like the US or UK or some other countries in Europe. And that's probably because we are missing some structures that we don't have in the Mexican markets. Like, for example, that's why we are celebrating so much the listing of the Mexican IPC future on the CME.
Why was the BMVIPC futures contract listed on CME?
We don't have a liquid derivatives market in Mexico, and the most traded asset in the equity markets is the Mexican IPC tracker, which is the NAFTRAC. The investors were not able to hedge at all this tracker or the exposure to the Mexican IPC index, which is the most important. Having the listed futures is going to help the local and international investors to be able to hedge or to gain exposure through that instrument on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange.
How do you see this contract impacting different participants?
I think it's going to be huge for many reasons. First, as I said before, for hedging purposes and gaining exposure, but as well, there are many type of trades that happen every day in the markets, like the cash and carry, when you buy the underlying and sell the future or sell the tracker. So these type of combinations bring a lot of volume to the markets, and they make the markets to gain momentum and to take advantage of the high volatility in the markets that we have. Most recently, with all the tariffs issues with the U.S. market, has brought a lot of volatility that has been improving the volumes in the Mexican market. Having the listed future of the IPC is going to help to increase volumes, probably decrease a little bit the volatility, and give exposure to the investors.
Do you expect this listing to improve liquidity in the Mexican equity market?
Most of the investors here, the institutional ones, like the mandatory pension funds, the private pension funds, as well as the mutual funds, they needed to have the potential of hedging these volatilities. This year, for example, Mexican IPC index has gained about 17-18% in peso terms, and then it pulled back about 5%. I mean, we never had a chance to lock the gains through any derivative, and this will give the investors a very good option to hedge. What is very relevant, John, is that this listing of the IPC future in Chicago is in pesos, which is going to boost importantly the peso trading of the Mexican market, both in Mexico as well as in Chicago.
What is this listing's role in Mexico's capital market integration with global markets?
Back in 2016, Mexican weight on the most important indexes in the world decreased by 50%. That killed the volumes in the markets. And one of the reasons is the lack of structure in their markets. We are missing a lot of futures, options, leverage, for example, and that brings to the conversation the news that the Mexican regulator and Congress, they have approved the creation of the Mexican hedge funds by first time ever, which is a relaxed, a more easy way to create a fund that contains leverage by first time ever. And that's is going to be supported hugely by having this future listed on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange.
How does the collaboration help the Mexican brokerage community specifically?
It's been huge for the last, I would say, probably more than 15 years. CME was at some point even board member of the Mexican Stock Exchange. I was more board member at that time. So they brought several ideas right after the exchange became public. The CME group helped a lot to identify a lot of potential things that happen. The Mexican Stock Exchange used to have a collaboration agreement with the CME where you were able to trade the Mexican derivatives market called MexDer through the CME as well as the CME through the MexDer. I think that's something we are missing today. It could probably happen in the near future. And that was boosting importantly the Mexican market. However, today, the Mexican inflation bonds are listed in Chicago as well, and probably 90% of the volumes of those bonds that are probably the top 10 or top 20 securities traded on the CME are the Mexican inflation bonds. I mean, it's huge. Mexican currency instruments are one of the largest instruments in the futures and options market in the CME. So I think the collaboration is huge. Having Jorge Alegría right now as CEO of the exchange, I'm sure it's going to boost the liquidity of the market, the stability, to decrease volatility in the markets, and it's going to be very beneficial for the investors, both Mexican and international ones.
What other measures are being explored to deepen Mexico's securities market and strengthen local intermediaries?
Back in 2023, Congress approved a new regulation allowing Mexican companies to go public through a process very close to the 144A in the U.S., like in the U.S. it's called private placements, and the Reg S as well. So it's a process where in a few weeks you can list a company both in bonds or equity or both, and without the need to go directly to through the Securities Commission. They also approved the creation of the hedge funds, which I mentioned, and they approved something very important, John, which is a private equity fund that you list in the market to finance small and mid-sized companies. You list this structure, it's called structure product. You list it in the market, then you capitalize that instrument, and that instrument lends money to small and mid-sized companies. I mean, deals of $3, $5, $10, $20 million. Because obviously, if you try to go with that size deals to large investors, they probably will not pay attention because they don't have the time to analyze that. So that's very clever. I mean, we are missing the secondary regulation for both the hedge funds as well as for the structured products. And I think they promised to have them before the end of this year. So we could have more listings of bonds as well as equity of small and mid-sized companies. Let me just give you an idea. 66% of the Mexican formal companies, the companies that are incorporated according to the Mexican tax and regulatory, 66% have no chance to get finance because the banking industry has a lot of restrictions to lend any type of a small and mid-sized companies because of the risk associated to that, the reserves they need to build, and the low profitability that they have. So this regulation change may boost the listing of companies. Just to give you a little comparison, John, in the U.S., you guys have probably between 40 and 50,000 listings of this type every year. Mexico is... the Mexican economy is a 20th it's about 5% of the size of the U.S. economy. That means that we should have at least 2,500 companies listing debt or equity every year. Today, we have a few, a handful of companies, probably between debt and equity, you don't have more than 10 a year, right? So this promises a lot to bring the market a new boost. That's what I was saying, started saying that we were bottoming, and I think we have only upside from here.